Hi there, Vicki here. So today we're making quite a few little things, little appetizers for this evening. And the first thing that we're making is a spicy crab tapas. Then we'll be making, as the second item, these little apple pie puff pastry cheesecake cups. Don't we'll wordsmith the name on that one. And then after that, we're going to make some Parmesan bacon garlic knots, and then these little watermelon refresher cups. I don't know. We're working it. So let's get to it.
All right, first things first, I needed my recipe for the spicy crab salad tapas. Pulled that out and started referring back to it so I could get all of the ingredients. I do best when I have everything laid out and I know what it is that I am working with. So this didn't really have a ton of ingredients. Two of them I got today. Two of them I had already in the, or several of them I had already in the fridge, which was helpful. But first thing I needed to do was chop up some stuff. And luckily for me, all of my knives were dirty. So I used a steak knife to cut everything. And of course, this recipe did call for it to be cut into a fine mince. So, yeah, we just did the best that we could with what we had. So, starting off with two sweet peppers. It was a yellow one and a red one. The recipe called, I think, for a quarter cup of each. So I just decided to do half of each of those long peppers. But honestly, thinking back on it, I probably could have done more. And truly, this steak knife performed very well. It was just a little time consuming. Um, but I was able to get the pieces nice and small, so that was good. Then after I got all of those chopped up. Next, I needed some green onion, and it was kind of an equal amount, so I just kind of eyeballed it. I think I went with two green onions, and I did a fine dice on these as well. I tried to just match the size. Did have a little visitor come by. He wanted some. So, of course, I did let him taste it because absolutely, if you're in the kitchen, you want to try something, sure. So he had the end of that jalapeno. He didn't mind it. He kept coming back looking for more food. Um, but eventually, I did sort of go off and get him set up with a snack. But I chose to do, I think, just half of this jalapeno, and I did cut it up in the same small size that I've diced everything else. All right. After that, I needed some cilantro. So I ripped some off of my cup that's been in the fridge, and I washed them. Now, all of my herbs that are on the stem like that, I tend to just put them in a cup of water in the fridge. That's what I did with the three bunches of cilantro that I got over this weekend, which came in handy because I needed 2 tablespoons for this recipe. So, trying to get a fine mince on those, did the best I could with the knife that I had. Next, the recipe called for 2 cloves of garlic, and I think I did three. Yes, that feels right. And I did separate out that other half of the jalapeno from the rest of my little veggie scraps because I'll use those veggie scraps to make a stock with probably in a couple months. But that other half of the jalapeno I want to use for other recipes this week. So certainly didn't want to just toss it in. Also, if I put half a jalapeno in my stock, it could make the stock a little spicy depending on how much water I add to it, and I certainly wouldn't want that for any recipe. Adding salt, pepper, and that was some lemon juice as well. And then the lump crab and heaping tablespoons of mayonnaise. Now, after I added the mayonnaise, I realized that that imitation crab really wasn't in as small a piece as I probably needed it to, so I took it out and chopped it up. Got mayonnaise everywhere. It's fine. So I mixed all of that up, and then it needed to sit in the fridge for about an hour to let the flavors mingle and develop. Um, so that was really the first step in getting everything for this recipe together. Then I just kind of took a second to tidy up. So I put away that half of the jalapeno, and I went and I got my veggie scrap bag, and I put all of the things except for the spicy bits in the veggie scrap bag. And then all the trash made its way to the trash can, etc. Sometimes you just gotta, especially when you're doing a day like this where you're making a lot of little things, I just have to reset in between each one. Spray the countertops down, wipe them down, get everything back to kind of a ground zero state so that we can keep going. It was especially important for this recipe because it called for rolling out this puff pastry on a lightly floured surface. So I really needed to clean my workspace for this. I chose to use three of these little sheets. I have purchased at other groceries where these three sheets are really just one big sheet, and I think that's all you would need. But at Lidl, this is how it sells it, so this is what we were working with. So I just rolled it out just a little bit, not nothing crazy, and then I tried to make about 2-inch wide squares. I ended up cutting each of those little sheets into about 8 pieces. Um, and because I am not a perfect person, the squares were not perfect. So, what I tried to do was kind of match up the squares with other squares that were similarly sized, because the next step was to cut a little teeny square outside of each of these top ones. Really, the purpose behind this is as the bottom puff rises, the top one also rises, and because it's missing the middle, now that creates the cup that you can use to fill your crab salad in. So I was just cutting out the squares, and I decided, oh, well, now I've got these cute little adorable squares. Why not, instead of wasting that, why don't I make some cute little adorable cups? Yeah, I've got little kids, and this would make something teeny tiny that would be bite sized for their little tiny mouths. So I decided to not waste those little squares and do that with them. I will say this was the most tedious part of this recipe. It took, it felt like forever. I'm not quite sure how long in reality. But the recipe said it was like 20 minutes, and it was probably closer to an hour because this was quite tedious to get everything cut out. And I know I didn't need to make the little baby ones, but look how cute they are. They're like half the size of the regular ones, and the regular ones are already small. So, anywho, after I got everything cut out, they went onto a sheet pan, but it did need an egg wash. So I went ahead and got one egg and beat that up a little bit. I added some water to this over there at the fridge, and then just mix that up some more. And I did get my pastry brush because we needed to brush both the bottom and the top layer square. And the egg wash kind of helps be the glue to hold these two pieces together. So just getting those coated, another little tedious step to this. If I was going to make this again, I might just buy the puff pastry cups, which they do sell at some groceries. Lidl does not sell them. But I've seen them before, probably at something like a Publix or a Lowe's Foods has them, because that would just drastically reduce the amount of time necessary to make this recipe. But got all of those assembled, including the cute little ones, and on my baking sheet. Now, the crab salad itself is refrigerated. It's a cold, food, so it is not going in the cups just yet. We're going to bake them as they are. I also chose to just bake the last little pieces of puff pastry plain because who doesn't like a little crunchy something something? And those went waiting for the oven, and here I go, cleaning it up again. So it wasn't terribly long, maybe 20 minutes total, 25, no, closer to 20 minutes total time in the oven, and it was time for these little cups to come out. So I think they browned up beautifully, although they didn't puff quite as much as I had hoped, but that's okay. So what I did is I just took a little spoon and I smooshed down the middle part of each of the cups to make room for our seafood salad. So I just put those on a plate and then I started spooning in the refrigerated seafood salad mixture into each of the little holes. And what I will say is that because I left the crabs stick pretty chunky still, I did find myself wanting to kind of dig to the bottom to find the peppers in order to add a little of those into each bite. But this was a crowd favorite, and I did have quite a bit of filling left over. So if when we make this again, I'll want to make sure that we have more puff pastry cups for them. But I recommend. This was good.